She begged for a crumb. They gave her nothing. But one human gave her everything she wanted, a love. The acid rain on Tarnic Sprawl 3 was steady tonight, a slow hiss over sheet metal rooftops and broken alley vents. It wasn't the kind of rain that cooled or cleaned. It burned the edges of old cloth and turned skin raw if left exposed for too long. Most people down in the lower verge didn't care anymore. They walked with hoods up or heads down, not because of the rain, but because nobody wanted to see what the world had become. Especially not here. In the shadows near a power transfer station, a violet-skinned woman stood barefoot against the wall, motionless. The hem of her robe was soaked, clinging to her legs like wet paper. She hadn't moved in hours. People passed her, a few glanced, none stopped. Her hair was a matted curtain of dark red, stuck to her cheek and jawline. Her arms stayed folded across her stomach, not to protect herself, just to stay warm. She whispered to no one in particular, "Please, just a crumb." Her voice was hoarse, like she hadn't spoken aloud in days. Maybe longer. There wasn't desperation in her tone, just fatigue, the kind that settled deep into the spine. Niavel, discarded from the Varellan birthing sanctum 2 years ago. She was classified as emotionally unstable and biologically inefficient after 3 failed mating cycles and 1 miscarriage. The elders said she was soft, incapable of properly regulating chemical submission during breeding. So they removed her from the gene line registry, branded her near the collarbone, and left her outside the sanctum gates. No notice, no papers, no compensation. She didn't beg then. But now, her body was thinner, hollow in places. Her eyes, large and silver, scanned the ground more than the people. And when she spoke, it was automatic, not hopeful. On the far end of the alley, a rust-stained utility truck hummed to a halt, steam puffing out from a cracked vent line. The engine gave 2 short clicks before shutting down, not entirely healthy, but not dead either. The door creaked open. A man stepped out, slowly. Kevin Ward, 31. Human. Earthborn. Former agri-hauler from the outer colonies. Now working freelance tech salvage and delivery. Not because it paid well, but because it kept him moving. The crawler truck was all he had left after losing his warehouse job back on LSRV. After his brother's overdose. After the woman he'd loved had chosen to die rather than keep living in the slums with him. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't looking for anyone. But when he saw her, standing in the alley with soaked hair, clothes ripped, eyes unfocused, he froze. His brain told him to move along. People like her were everywhere down here. He knew the danger. Implants, tracking chips, gang-marked property. If you got involved, you inherited the risk. Still, his legs didn't move. He watched her whisper something into the rain. Then her knees buckled. She caught herself against the wall. Didn't cry out. Didn't groan. Just adjusted her footing and remained standing. He took a step forward. She looked up too fast. Her pupils dilated. Her entire body tensed like she expected violence. And that hit him harder than it should have. He stopped at a distance. Not too close. Not threatening. "You all right?" he asked. He didn't raise his voice. She stared at him, unsure if she was being mocked. Kevin shrugged out of his jacket, thick canvas, old but dry, and slowly lowered it toward the wet ground in front of her. "Just take it," he said. "I'm not going to touch you." Her eyes darted between his face and the jacket. Her lip quivered, but she didn't speak. She crouched and took it with a kind of reverence that embarrassed him. She didn't even put it on right away. She held it in both arms like it might be taken from her. "What's your name?" he asked. Silence. Then, quietly, almost with effort, "Naya Vel." He nodded once. "I'm Kevin." Another long silence passed. Her eyes searched his, trying to understand what he wanted. People didn't give things for free here. Nothing came without strings. "You got anywhere to sleep?" he asked. Her head tilted slightly. The question confused her. "Any shelter. Bed. A wall out of the rain," he clarified. She shook her head. A simple, robotic movement. He looked back toward the crawler. It wasn't meant for guests. It barely had room for him. But it was warm. There was soup left from the last run and a water purifier that still worked. He had an old medkit, too. She looked like she hadn't seen a clean surface in weeks. He sighed. You don't have to come. But if you want heat food, it's parked right there. Naya didn't move. So he turned his back and walked toward the truck. 5 steps in, he heard the soft squelch of bare feet in water. When he opened the side hatch, she was 2 meters behind him. Still watching. Still unsure. He stepped inside first, left the door open. She stood at the threshold for almost a full minute before stepping up into the vehicle. Her head brushed the roof. She was taller than him, barefoot, soaked, and still taller. She moved carefully, like someone trained to obey invisible rules. Inside, she saw the heater, the low cot, the emergency ration stacked on a shelf. Her fingers twitched toward the heater, but she didn't go near it. Kevin handed her a sealed food pack. It's chicken-flavored. Tastes like wet chalk, but it's hot. She took it, sat down on the floor, not the cot. Ate in small, cautious bites. Kevin sat on the edge of the cot and unlaced his boots. Didn't speak for a while. Just listened to the rain on the hull. He glanced at her again. Her body language told a story. Legs curled under her, shoulders hunched, as if prepared to flinch. But she was eating. That meant she hadn't entirely given up. I used to haul for colonial stations, he said casually. Now I work freelance. Short jobs. Scrap runs. Fix what I can. No reply. Just chewing. I got some extra socks if you need. I'm not property, she whispered suddenly. If that's what you think. Kevin blinked. Didn't say you were. They think I am. The ones who left me. She didn't look at him when she spoke. She stared at the wall. I couldn't give them what they wanted. So they said I had no purpose. Said I was wrong. Not enough chemicals. Too much emotion. Her voice cracked. She stopped herself from saying more. Kevin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You want to stay tonight? You can. That's all. Her fingers gripped the food wrapper. I don't need anything, she whispered. I know. She looked up then. For real. Met his eyes. Saw that he wasn't lying. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she stopped shaking. Kevin got up, tossed a spare blanket across to her. If you sleep there, the heater will keep you warm, he said. I'll be driving. Got a job up near the old relay field. Takes me out of the core. Not the worst place to be. Naya blinked slowly, like she hadn't heard words like that before. And then she did something strange. She lay down right there on the floor, blanket clutched her chest, jacket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was hidden by her hair. She didn't say thank you. Didn't cry. She just closed her eyes. And Kevin turned away, slid into the driver's seat, started the ignition, and pulled out of the alley. He didn't look back. But he knew. She was still there. And that meant, for once, he hadn't made the wrong choice. Not yet. The road out of the verge was barely a road. More like a scar across the edge of Tarnic Sprawl 3. Cracked pavement split by roots, old crash debris, and patches of frozen runoff where the city's drainage systems had long stopped working. Kevin kept the crawler steady, eyes on the faded NAV beacons blinking across the fogged windshield. The heater hummed behind him, fighting the cold air leaking through the side seals. In the mirror, he checked again. She was still asleep. Niavel hadn't moved from the floor. She lay curled up in the blanket he'd tossed her, jacket still clutched over her chest. Her breathing had evened out. One arm was tucked under her cheek, the other wrapped around her waist. He noticed something now that he hadn't caught before. The dark mark just above her collarbone, half hidden under the cloth. A brand. Faint, but there. 3 vertical lines. Virulent fertility cast symbol. Struck through. Discarded. He turned back to the road, jaw tight. He didn't ask. Not yet. But he remembered from old colony data, the ones branded like that weren't just cast out. They were considered effective. Dangerous, even. There were rumors that some were tracked. Hunted down. Used again in different ways. Kevin reached into the glove bin and pulled out a small medical scanner. Outdated but reliable. He hesitated. He didn't want to scare her. But if there was a chip in her, if someone was tracking her, it needed to come out now. Before they reached the outskirts, he pulled over near an old transmitter tower, long collapsed and now covered in twisted vines and frost. The crawler shuddered to a halt. Naya stirred, eyes opened slowly, confused. Her voice was low, groggy. Why'd we stop? I need to check something, Kevin said. He kept his tone calm. You might have a chip. Back from when they marked you. Her body went rigid. No, it's okay, he said. I'm not going to touch you without your say. But if there's a chip, they could follow you. Follow us. She sat up slowly, blanket slipping off her shoulder. Her skin looked paler in the morning light. I don't know, she said. They pushed something into my back. Before they left me. It burned. But I thought it was just punishment. It might be more than that. He knelt beside her now, scanner in hand. This won't hurt. I swear. She nodded. A small, reluctant motion. Kevin scanned the area between her shoulder blades. It beeped, once then again. Red. There was something inside. Small. Embedded deep under the tissue. Not a locator for safety. A tracker with active ping intervals. Someone out there knew she was gone, and where she was now. Kevin swore under his breath. We have to get it out. Naya's breath hitched. Ow! He didn't answer right away. He rummaged in the medical kit, pulling out sterilizer pads, a blade tip, local anesthetic foam. Everything was secondhand, slightly outdated, but usable. You trust me? He asked, quieter now. She didn't say anything, but after a long pause, she shifted forward, turned around, pulled her hair to one side. Just do it, she whispered. If they find me again, I won't survive it. Kevin worked quickly, not carelessly, just with the urgency of someone who'd done this before. The blade wasn't elegant, but it was sharp. He pressed the anesthetic foam in a tight circle between her shoulder blades, counted 10 seconds, then made a small incision. Naya gasped but didn't flinch. He could see the capsule now, a tiny chip with a filament tail embedded near her spine. He used the extraction tool, really just a repurposed gripper, slid it under, and pulled. The filament tore a little coming out. She hissed in pain, shoulders shaking. Blood welled up instantly. He pressed a sealant patch to the wound and held it there. It's out, he said. Naya was shaking, but it wasn't from the cold. She sat forward, hunched, arms crossed over her chest again, trying to catch her breath. They put that in me, she muttered. Like I was livestock. Like I couldn't decide where to go. Kevin wrapped the chip in foil and stuffed it into a lead-line scrap compartment under the floor. Then he rinsed his hands in the disinfectant gel and crouched in front of her. You're not livestock, he said. You're free now. They're not tracking you anymore. Naya stared at the floor. Then, slowly, her eyes lifted to meet his. No one's ever done something like that for me, she said. He didn't reply, just stood and went to the console. The crawler rumbled to life again, engine coughing as it climbed the slope toward the Outlands. They rode in silence for a while. Naya leaned her head against the side wall, eyes half closed. You were a hauler once, right? She asked. Kevin nodded. Earth to Yuri 5. Then the rings. Then fringe contracts. Why stop? Lost the permit. And the will. She gave a tired, dry smile. You seem better than most. I'm not. You gave me a name, she said softly. You asked mine. Didn't seem like a hard thing. Naya looked out the window. The sprawl was fading behind them. In its place, stretches of dry scrub, old mining silos, rusted cable rigs leaning like dead trees. They were entering the no zone, uncharted land between sectors. No patrols, no laws. Where are we going? She asked. Old maintenance stop. Nobody uses it anymore. It's quiet. I sleep there between jobs. You live alone? I do now. She studied his face again, not out of curiosity, more like she was trying to understand the shape of someone who'd chosen to be kind without being asked. Kevin shifted gears. You'll be safe there, at least for a while. And after that, he didn't answer, because he didn't know yet. But as he glanced over and saw her curled in the passenger seat now, blanket tied around her, blood clean from her back, he felt something shift. Not pity, not obligation, something deeper. And in that moment, without realizing it, Kevin Ward made a quiet decision. He was going to protect her, not because she was helpless, but because someone should have long before now. And he was done looking away. The safe house was barely a structure, an abandoned relay maintenance shelter built before the dome grid fell out of commission. Just one room reinforced with polymer plating, sunk into a ridge of wind-blasted stone. The exterior looked like debris from orbit. The entry seal had to be forced open by hand, and even then, it took Kevin 2 minutes to override the corroded panel with a bypass kit. He knew the place. He'd used it once before during a bad contract run with stolen fuel cores and nowhere to hide. Back then, it had felt like a coffin. Now, it felt like the only option. Inside was dry. Not clean, not comfortable, but dry. A long bench under a cracked wall screen. A power cell jack still barely functional. Fold-down cot. Water tap with a gravity-fed purifier. The heater hummed low, struggling, but alive. Naya stood just inside the threshold, eyes scanning every corner of the small space. Her body language had changed, less frozen, more alert. She wasn't flinching anymore, but she wasn't relaxed either. She was calculating exits, cover points, whether this was a trap with a slow fuse. "It's yours too," Kevin said, stripping off his tool belt and setting it on the bench. "At least for now." She nodded once, then stepped inside fully, arms still wrapped around her midsection. Kevin moved toward the cot, unrolled the thermal sheet, and tossed her a sealed set of clothing. Undersuit, long-sleeved, clean but wrinkled from being packed too long. "Won't win you any fashion awards," he said, "but it'll keep you warm." Naya took it carefully, holding it against her chest like it might dissolve. She stared at the folded fabric for a few seconds before whispering, "Do you want me to earn this?" Kevin turned to look at her. He didn't speak for a long moment. "No," he said finally, evenly. "It's not a transaction." Naya lowered her gaze, ashamed but not surprised by her own question. "Sorry," she muttered. "Don't be," he said. "You've been around the wrong people." Silence settled between them. Not heavy, just long. A silence of readjustment. Naya turned her back and slowly peeled off the remains of the robe. Kevin turned away without being told. He heard the wet fabric hit the floor, then the faint rustle of her dressing. When she finished, she spoke again, quieter. "Thank you." Kevin nodded, but didn't look. "Get some rest. I'll check the perimeter." He stepped outside, letting the door seal behind him. The wind had picked up again. Sharp cold. He walked the edge of the bluff, scanned for drone activity, looked for any sign of movement. The chip he'd removed was still in the lead casing in his truck. He was considering tossing it down a ravine, but part of him wanted to keep it, to remember what had almost followed her here. Back inside, Naya had curled on the cot, blanket wrapped around her legs, Kevin's oversized shirt over the thermal suit. She was staring at the ceiling panel with a blank expression, eyes unfocused. She didn't realize she was whispering to herself until Kevin came back in. "I'm still alive," she said under her breath. Kevin heard it, but didn't comment. He dropped a ration pouch near the small heating unit and sat on the floor against the opposite wall. Naya looked at him. "You don't ask questions," she said. He gave a tired half-smile. "You've had enough of those. But don't you want to know why I was in that alley? What I did wrong?" "I already know," he said. "You were discarded. Like equipment. Doesn't matter why. Only that it happened." She studied his face for a long time. "You really don't want anything from me? I want you to live. That's all." He didn't add that it was already more than he'd wanted from anyone in a long time. After a while, she stood, crossed to the water tap, filled a dented metal cup and drank slowly, as if expecting it to vanish between sips. When she sat back down, she curled her legs beneath her and asked softly, "You lost someone?" Kevin exhaled slow. "Yeah." He didn't say more. She didn't push. That night, they slept in shifts. Kevin took the floor first, blaster close at hand. Naya dozed, but kept waking, checking him, checking the door. By dawn, she was leaning against the wall near his shoulder, watching the sun rise through a break in the metal paneling. "I didn't think there'd be another day," she said. Kevin sat up, rubbing his eyes. "There is." He stood, stretched his legs, checked the NAV device. A red light blinked, passive scan complete. No incoming movement. No active signals. "You ever been outside the sprawl?" he asked. "No. I've got contacts near the Oven Fields. Off-grid commune. They don't ask questions. We lay low there long enough. I can run supplies again. Start over." She was quiet. "Then, and me, you do whatever you want. Or nothing at all." Her lips parted slightly like she wanted to speak, then closed again. Kevin caught the look, the hesitation, not fear, but disbelief. The kind of doubt that came after years of being trained to expect betrayal. He didn't try to fix it. He just said, "You're safe here, and I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." She turned her face away, but he could see her shoulders shake once. A silent cry. No sound. He didn't reach for her. But when she sat beside him a moment later, pressed her shoulder to his, he didn't pull away. And for the first time, there was no silence between them. Just quiet. Safe. Real. And, for a moment, enough. The sky outside the relay shelter had turned a dull orange-gray, the kind of color that didn't belong to a proper sunrise. Just polluted light bleeding through layers of industrial haze. Kevin checked the portable solar cell one more time, tapped the indicator. Still no charge. The storm overhead was heavy with static interference. Not ideal, but survivable for a few days. They had water, rations for 6, fuel for 3 jumps if they rationed. It wasn't enough for comfort, but enough for planning. Inside, Naya sat cross-legged near the heater, her hands wrapped around a metal cup of warm broth. She was quiet but not distant. Alert, watching, learning the rhythm of the place, the man, and the pauses in his behavior. She flinched less now, but every sound, a creak, a buzz, a vent hiss, still pulled her eyes toward the door first, not him. Kevin crouched across from her, running diagnostics on a signal scrambler salvaged from a down survey drone. He wasn't speaking, not to avoid her, but because he could feel her thinking, letting her own words gather. "You live like this all the time?" she asked finally. He shrugged. "Been on my own for about 6 years. It's quieter this way. Quieter isn't safer. I'm still breathing." Naya sipped the broth again. "That chip you pulled out, the one they used to track me, could it still broadcast?" "No. I jammed it when I locked it in the lead casing. It's blind now, but they'll know I'm missing. They already knew. They just didn't care until you moved. Then you became a variable. Some places like to erase variables." Her voice lowered. "If they come again, they won't try to take me back." "No," Kevin said. "They'll try to erase you." She nodded, like she'd already accepted that truth. But her eyes betrayed something else, something that looked a lot like fight, buried under all that submission. A seed, not yet ready to bloom. Kevin set the scrambler down. "I've got a contact. Name's Furin. Used to work intel relay cleanup for off-world security. Now he trades identities. Not legal ones, but functional. We get you a name, a print, an iris ID. You become someone else." Naya blinked. "You're risking a lot for me." "I know. Why?" Kevin didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked. Her violet skin still bore faint bruises. Her long red hair was cleaner now, brushed back and tied loosely with a strip of cloth from his tool bag. His shirt hung off her shoulder. She wore it like it belonged to her now. Something about that made his chest tighten, and he didn't know how to describe it. So he didn't try. "Because no one did for the woman I lost," he said at last. "And maybe this time, I don't want to fail." Naya's expression shifted, subtle but sharp. She reached forward slowly, set the empty cup aside, then held out her hand. "Let me help. Whatever comes next, I want to choose it." Kevin hesitated only a second, then clasped her hand. It was warm, stronger than it looked. That night, while patching a gap in the shelter's side vent, Kevin heard something. Low-frequency drone hum, distant but getting closer. "Down," he said, voice sharp. Naya hit the floor instantly, pressing against the wall. He moved to the panel, powered down the heater, dimmed the interior lights, crawled to the viewport, and peeked through the shielding. A small scout drone, Varela make. Civil marked, but repurposed for patrol. It skimmed across the ridge, scanned briefly, then moved on. Kevin waited a full 10 minutes before breathing normally. "They're scanning perimeters," he said. "Might be a wide net. Might be random. But they're not done looking." "Then we can't wait anymore," Naya said. She stood, calmer than expected. Kevin looked at her. "You're sure?" She nodded. "You said we move. So we move." Kevin activated the crawler's boot sequence. "We leave before daylight. If we make it to Sector Gray 9's fringe, Furin can mask you. New registry. No trackers. After that, no one from the sanctum will ever find you again. What about you? She asked. He looked over his shoulder, smirked faintly. Guess I'll need a new alias too. Naya stepped closer. Then we don't run alone. Kevin paused, just long enough to register that the fear in her posture had finally given way to resolve. She wasn't asking to be carried anymore. She was asking to be included. Later, after the crawler was packed and prepped, they shared a ration in silence. As they sat close beside the heater for the last time, Naya reached out and touched his scarred hand, the one burned years ago. The one he always used, even when it hurt. She kissed it. Then she whispered, "This is the hand that saved me." Kevin didn't speak. He couldn't, but he held her hand tighter than before. And when she didn't pull away, he knew something had changed. Not just in her, in him too. They left before first light. The crawler's engine groaned awake under the strain of cold steel and worn circuits. Kevin drove with the lights off, following terrain markers embedded in his memory. Naya sat in the passenger seat. Wrapped in the coat she refused to shed, Kevin's shirt still beneath it. Her hair was tied again, cleaner now, still damp from the rinse they'd managed with the portable purifier. The skin beneath her collar showed no more blood, just a healing scar where the tracker used to be. Neither of them spoke much. Not because there was nothing to say, but because too much had already been said in silence. Kevin kept one eye on the scanner and one hand near the short-wave disruptor resting by the dash. Every few kilometers, he tapped the jamming pulse, short bursts that masked their signal trail. The terrain around them changed gradually. The sprawl fell away into old terraform patches, abandoned greenhouses now filled with rusted frameworks and creeping ash vines. As they passed through a hollowed transit tunnel, the crawler dipped for a second, scraping metal, and Naya instinctively grabbed his arm. She let go just as quickly, but her fingers lingered for a moment longer than necessary. "You okay?" Kevin asked without looking. She nodded. Reflex. I used to brace myself like that when handlers got angry. He didn't reply, just eased up on the throttle and adjusted the crawler's path. 3 hours later, they crossed into the fringe zones of Gray 9. The air turned dry. Wind carried red dust across the road, and the power towers along the ridge crackled in the distance, still live but untended. The region had long been abandoned by corporate infrastructure, left to outlaws, ex-cons, and those who refused to belong. It was perfect. The hideout was tucked into a crater beneath an old atmospheric stabilizer, one of the tall steel monoliths that had once seeded breathable air across the sprawl sectors. Now, it was a rusted hulk with one access hatch and a single power tap. But someone had rigged the inside. Lights, a water line, and biometric locks not registered to any system. Kevin pounded on the steel door 3 times. Waited. Then again, twice, rapid. A metallic voice crackled through the comm port. "You look like trash, Ward." Kevin exhaled. "Nice to hear your voice, too, Fern." A long pause. Then the hatch slid open with a reluctant groan. Fern was older than Kevin by maybe 10 years. Thinner, grayer, with a left eye replaced by a black optic lens that hummed softly as it focused. He wore scavenged armor, scraps from half a dozen uniforms, no two matching. He looked past Kevin at Naya. His expression didn't change. "She Varellan?" "Yeah." "She yours?" "She's with me," Kevin said, steady. "She needs a wipe and a full re-ID." Fern glanced between them, then shrugged. "Fine, but I'm not doing this out of kindness. I owe you 2 crates worth of meds. This makes us even." "Done." Inside, Fern's rig smelled like metal and old solvent. The lights were dim, and every surface was cluttered with tools, gear parts, and cracked screens. Naya stood close to Kevin, quiet but not hiding. "You chipped?" Fern asked her, opening a drawer. She replied, voice even. He took it out. "You got trauma symptoms?" Naya raised her chin slightly. "Yes." "You planning to freeze or scream when the scanner runs?" "No." Fern gave a half nod. "Good. Sit." She did. Kevin stood beside her as Fern adjusted the old registry scanner, fingers tapping fast over the cracked pad. As the process began, Kevin saw it, the way Naya's shoulders tensed. Not from pain, from memory. The faint hum of the scanner, the cold steel chair, the scent of sterilizer. These things didn't harm her physically, but they took her somewhere else, back to when she was tagged, tested, restrained. Kevin gently placed his hand over hers. She looked at him. He didn't say anything. Didn't need to. After several minutes, Furren shut off the screen. Done. She's someone else now. New name. New blood code. No trace of sanctum tags. Even retinal ID is ghosted. Naya sat still, processing. What's her name? Kevin asked. Furren smirked. Whatever she wants it to be. She opened her mouth. Then stopped. Closed it again. Thought carefully. Then, just Naya. Furren shrugged. Simple's good. After the wipe, they stayed in Furren's shelter for a few hours to rest. Kevin sat cross-legged on the floor, unpacking food rations. Naya moved slowly now, not from pain, but from something like clarity. She wasn't drifting anymore. Her choices were deliberate. After eating, she sat beside Kevin. Close. Too close to pretend it was casual. Back there, she said quietly, in the chair. I saw their faces again. Kevin turned slightly, listening. I thought I was going to forget them one day. The ones who used me. But I remember everyone. Their voices. Their breath. The way they said I was too soft. Like softness was a failure. She hesitated. Do you think I'm soft? She asked him. Kevin looked her in the eyes. You walked through hell. You let me cut into your back without flinching. You let a stranger hold your hand. You think softness did that? Her throat tightened. Her eyes glistened, but the tears didn't fall. Then, without a word, she leaned in and pressed her lips against his. Not desperate, not performative, just honest. When they parted, Kevin rested his forehead against hers. We're leaving tonight, he whispered. We'll drive until the scanners stop pinging. Then we build something quiet, something real. And if they come again, she asked, then I'll bleed for you. Naya's hand slid under his shirt, palm flat against his chest. She wasn't trembling anymore. I don't want to survive anymore, she whispered. I want to live. Kevin nodded once. Then stay with me. I already have. And as dusk fell across the gray nine fringe, the two of them sat there. No longer runner and rescued, no longer broken and discarded, but two people who had chosen each other. And this time, that choice was real. The wind outside Furren's shelter had died down, but the silence that replaced it wasn't peaceful. It was still, heavy, like something waiting. Kevin stood near the crawler, tightening the straps across the last storage bin. He checked fuel cells, calibrated the signal dampener, reloaded the compact firearm he'd barely touched since leaving the Verge. His jaw was locked tight, movements deliberate. Not rushed, not panicked. Just certain. They would leave within the hour. They had to. Inside the shelter, Naya sat on the cot with one leg tucked under her, zipping up the thermal suit Furren had modified for her. Tight, matte black, with flexible plating and a heat core in the chest. It fit her body well, far better than Kevin's old shirt had, but she'd kept the shirt anyway. Tied it around her waist like it was armor. She heard Kevin return before he spoke. We got about 40 minutes before satellite sync passes this region, he said, setting a toolkit on the floor. After that, we move. I've mapped 3 jump zones outside enforcement radar. If we make the third one, we're ghosts. She nodded but didn't stand. And Furren, he's staying. He likes being alone. She looked up. Do you? Kevin paused. Not anymore. The words hung there, too honest to ignore. She rose and walked to him slowly, watching the tension in his posture. She noticed how his shoulders hadn't relaxed in days. How his left hand still subconsciously hovered near his weapon. How even now, he kept half his weight on the balls of his feet, ready to move. You're ready for a fight, she said softly. I'm hoping for a quiet exit, he replied. But hoping doesn't change what's out there. Her hand slid around his wrist. Not to stop him, just to anchor him. You've done everything, she whispered. You saved me, gave me shelter, gave me back my name. Let me give you something. Kevin hesitated, then turned to her fully. Naya reached up and unfastened the clasp of the suit at her collar. just enough to peel it back from her shoulder. The brand was gone, visually erased, but the scar beneath the skin was still there, a faint outline where the sanctum had marked her. She took his hand and placed it over the scar. "I want to replace this," she said, "with something I chose." Kevin's throat tightened. "You don't have to do this." "I know," she said. "That's why I want to." He didn't rush forward, didn't pull her into some dramatic embrace. He just leaned down and kissed the place where the scar had been. Carefully, deliberately, like he was making a promise, not taking something. Naya closed her eyes. When they finally came together, slowly, tentatively, it wasn't out of desperation or need. It was choice. Hands exploring, not claiming. Bodies learning each other without shame or expectation. He removed her suit layer by layer with gentle fingers. She tugged his shirt over his head, lips brushing the burned skin on his shoulder as he exhaled. Neither of them said a word during those minutes. Only breaths, quiet sounds, and the heat between them growing steady and certain. Later, when their bodies lay still, Naya curled against him, one arm over his chest, face buried against his neck. She whispered, "They said I was defective." Kevin rested his hand over her hip. "They were wrong. You think I'm whole?" "I think you're mine," he said quietly. She didn't cry this time, but her voice cracked when she replied, "Then I'll stay whole. For you." Just before they dressed again, a faint beeping broke the stillness. Kevin grabbed the scanner. Furin system, now synced to the crawler's short-range sensors. Inbound vehicle. High speed. Not local. Air pattern blades. No ID ping. Naya sat upright. "Sanctum. Or worse," Kevin said. "Slaver squad." He pulled on his jacket, tossed her a jacket of her own, coated, reinforced, small enough to fit. "We move now. Through the side ridge. There's a secondary pass they don't know about." Naya strapped on the boots Furin had prepped for her. She said nothing more, only nodded and followed. Outside, the crawler was already humming as Kevin keyed in the boot cycle. The red dust kicked up fast, engines warming, masking heat signatures. As they slid into the seats and the vehicle lurched forward, Naya looked over her shoulder once, and for the first time didn't flinch. The hunter vehicle dropped from the sky 5 minutes later, but by then, they were already gone. Not lost, just finally running towards something. The storm broke 3 hours into the run. Heavy wind slammed the crawler from the side as they cut through the red soil pass, climbing into the high ridgelands. The vehicle rattled with every gust, but Kevin kept a tight grip on the controls, guiding them through loose rock and gravel like he'd done a dozen times before. His face was steady, focused, but Naya saw how hard he worked to keep them on course. In the passenger seat, she sat with both feet planted, one hand braced on the dash, the other resting over her belly, an unconscious habit that had started after the second jump. She hadn't said it aloud yet, but she already knew. Kevin slowed as they reached the peak. Below, the land opened wide. A scattering of moss-choked homesteads lay ahead, small domes and heat towers built into the natural rock beds. No spires, no scanners, no drones, just silence, broken only by wind and the rhythmic purring of the crawler engine. He glanced at her. "This is it." Naya looked out the window, then back at him. "No one will find us here. Only people who belong here. And we will." They parked near a half-buried dome. The air outside was cold, clean. Kevin stepped down first, helped Naya out carefully, her boots crunching against dry gravel. He pulled open the rusted gate and guided her inside. The interior wasn't much. Single room, soft light fixtures, a thermal coil in the floor, bedrolls tucked into wall nooks. But it was dry, warm, quiet, safe. Naya moved slowly, her body still adjusting to trust, still expecting noise or alarms or commands. But none came, only Kevin's presence, his movements, the way he looked at her like she was still whole, even after everything. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, arms draped loosely over his knees. She joined him without a word, rested her head on his shoulder. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Naya lifted her face, eyes searching his. "I need to tell you something." Kevin turned to her, quiet, listening. "I missed a cycle," she said. "Back at Furin's. I didn't notice at first. I thought it was stress. or a malnutrition. His brow furrowed gently. I'm pregnant, she said. Kevin didn't speak right away. His eyes softened, his body stilled. Nia looked down quickly. I don't expect anything. You don't have to. He reached for her face and stopped her words with a kiss. Not out of urgency, but out of certainty. Then he pulled back, rested his forehead against hers. We'll raise them here, he said, where no one gets to decide what you're worth ever again. She let out a breath, half relief, half disbelief. You're not scared? She asked. I was, he said, until I met you. Nia leaned into him again, both arms wrapped around his chest now. He held her carefully, as if the weight of her against him meant something sacred. Outside, the wind calmed. A faint light spread across the rocky plain, early dusk glowing between the broken clouds. Inside, she sat between his legs, his hands gently resting on her stomach now, over the life growing within her. I never thought I'd have a future, she whispered. You didn't get a choice before, he replied. But you do now. She turned to look at him. Then I choose this. I choose you. And he smiled, real and quiet. The kind that stays. That night, she slept curled beside him on the floor, his jacket over both of them. No doors locked. No alarms set. No hiding. Just peace. And for the first time since she was born into a system that measured her worth by function and obedience, Nia Vel was free and loved and never going back.